out of service last Sunday, and sort of got hit with what happened in Texas. And I spent the week really struggling with this idea of loving kindness, because I was feeling a little broken. I was feeling a little disheartened. I was feeling a little frustrated. As soon as my news feed sort of lit up with everything that was happening, I could feel myself wanting to shut down. I could feel myself wanting to protect myself. I could feel myself wanting to not know, to just not know, because it's so hard. And on top of that, for those people who are also taking my shadow class, we are in the deep end of the shadow class right now. We are in week 4, moving into week 5. We are in the deep end. We are swimming in the deep end of the pool. Loving kindness is this idea of the beingness of compassion and love. The beingness of it, how to actually be it, to show up as it. And here in Unity, we have a very specific understanding of how we approach shifts in consciousness, how we approach growing in consciousness. And here in Unity, because we truly believe that there is only one presence and one life happening everywhere, even when it feels different than that there actually is only one thing happening. We are the thing that is happening. And so we begin with ourselves. So the context that I want to explore loving kindness with you today is through this idea of moving from me to we to us. Moving from the personal to the collective to the universal. And we're going to start from me, because that is who and what we are in this teachings. We understand that this place that I inhabit, that I live into, that I live from, is all that there is. Because again, as I said earlier, time and space, they're not real. They're an illusion. The absolute realm, we contain multitudes. We are the very thing itself. So I really want everybody to just think about that for a minute. To feel it in your body. You are how God shows up in time and in space. And if God is a trigger word for you, let it go. Because I'm not talking about the God that's anthropomorphized and sitting on the throne. I'm not talking about the white-haired dude. I'm not talking about Jesus when I'm talking about God as an entity all unto itself. I'm talking about the principles. The principles of love and joy and beauty and harmony and grace and creativity and flow and passion. That is the God as we understand it in Unity teaching. So you are how the divine shows up in time and in space. Just take a moment and feel that. Put your hand on your heart. Your hand is the hand of the divine. Your heart is the very beating of the divine. Your eyes, your ears. Look at each other. Each other. You are. This is it, folks. This is it. We are it. And it's a really powerful space to be. And yet we forget it all the time. Something happens, like something shooting up into our news feed, and we forget it. We forget the truth of who we are. So all of the major religions have this idea of loving kindness. They all intrinsically incorporate this idea with slight variations. And in the Jewish tradition, which was my birth tradition, so it's one that I am very familiar with and comfortable with, loving kindness is held in this word chesed. Everybody say that with me. You got to spit a little bit. You got to get that going on, right? Chesed. So chesed is this idea of loving kindness, and it's sometimes also translated into the word devotion. It is this idea, ultimately, not of our human understanding of God, of love, but it is God, the divine understanding of love. It is an absolute. There's no bartering around it. It is the thing that is always present. It is the thing that is unconditional in its expression. And in the Jewish tradition, how that the chesed expresses is through the sacred covenant that Moses and God sort of create, and the Israelites create. How many people in here have seen the Ten Commandments? Okay, so you know the story that I'm talking about. Even if you don't know much about Judaism, you know that story. And in that story, we have Moses receiving the Ten Commandments, the things that we are to live by, the laws that we are asked and invited into. And if we activate those laws, then we get to experience chesed. We get to experience the loving kindness that is all around us. Now, if you remember that story, you remember that the Israelites, we love the Israelites, but God keeps giving them miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle. I mean, the 10 plagues come, things get turned into, water turns into blood. I mean, there's the slaying of the firstborn happens. They get the parting of the Red Sea. I mean, they walk through, the entire ocean divides for them, and they walk through it. And they get on the other side, and they're there gathered. And Moses goes up to the mountaintop in consciousness. He goes to the mountaintop to receive the Ten Commandments. And what do the Israelites do while he's away? They create this totally false idol. Not the one that helped them part the Red Sea, not the one that, they create the golden calf. You remember that? The whole song and dance number in the film, right? Around the golden calf. They create this golden calf. And Moses comes back down, and what does he do? He totally loses it, right? He totally loses it. What are you people doing? And he smashes the tablets, right? You don't deserve these. How does that feel? That's a lot of our embedded theology. We don't deserve these things. And then Moses goes back up in consciousness, and God says, here you go, and gives them again. Gives them again. Because no matter how many times we think we are failing, no matter how many times we are worshiping to a false idol, everybody in here has a false idol, more than one. For some of us, it's email. Serious though. For some of it's our job. It's our career. We somehow think that that is our source, that is the thing that is everything. Behind all of that is chesed, is something else that never turns away from us. So for those who are new to Unity, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who were the founders of Unity, had a very particular take on their interpretation of sacred scripture. So instead of it being a literal interpretation, instead of it being that these stories that we're reading in these sacred texts are actually literally true, what they stepped into, and what we believe in Unity, is that they are metaphysical interpretations of the journey of our soul. That the entire scriptures, both the Judeo and the Christian scriptures, sort of lay out the journey that we all take individually in our own journey towards the Christ-Buddha consciousness. They're metaphysical. They're not literal. So what that means is that you are the Israelites. Each of us is the Israelites. In the metaphysical interpretation of what the Israelites are, is they are spiritual consciousness. And they're always seeking to expand, always seeking to grow, always seeking to know more of itself. And along the way, we might find ourselves caught up in false idols. For some of us, it's the news. What is the thing that you give so much weight and so much value to that it supersedes the truth of who you truly are? Our invitation always is to turn towards God, turn towards love, turn towards grace, because that is always there. God does not ever turn from us. Because, let me say it again, God is not a person. God is not prone to anthropomorphic human feelings. God is a divine idea that is a constant. It is an absolute. It never changes. It never wavers. So in our experience of separation, what's the thing that's changed? Us. Which is awesome. Because it means that we can shift and change our focus back again. It's not outside the realm of what our capacity is, because guess what? We are it. So when I say that we're turning towards God, I'm not talking about turning towards a God out there. I'm talking about turning within and touching that space within that knows truth, that knows who we are, that knows love, that knows it so well. Wants nothing more than to be the outlet for it, the expression for it, showing up in time and in space. I love this quote from Exodus. And I'll be honest, sometimes it's rough in the Judeo scriptures to find stuff that, that isn't all about an eye for an eye. But this, I think, exemplifies perfectly what I'm speaking around today. Abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for the 1000th generation. This is chesed, the 1000th generation. Every iteration of who you are, every day that you experience a rebirth and a renewal, that's another generation. That chesed is present for you. Let's say that word again. Chesed. Yeah, that's a good word. You love to spit, right? Because it all starts right here. It really does start right here. If we're not clear about this concept of loving kindness, how on earth can we possibly show up for the rest of the world? How can we possibly hold each other if we're struggling to understand that we are it? It's not something we have to get. It is something that we are here to reveal more fully, more powerfully. And let's be honest, loving ourselves is not the easiest thing in the world. And I know particularly within the shadow class, as we're facing the parts of ourselves that we have cut ourselves off from, that we've said we're not that, we don't want to be that, we really don't want to be that. As we welcome those things into our awareness, it's really easy to start piling on. It's really easy to not be able to hold that love and that compassion for ourselves. And whether you're in the shadow class or not, y'all know what I'm talking about, right? We pile onto ourselves. We are judgmental, we are critical, we are hard on ourselves all the time. So, let's talk about the definition of loving kindness. Because loving kindness is something that is not kindness. I want to be clear. Kindness is kindness, but kindness is not always loving kindness. Loving kindness is something that is, you know that expression, tough love? That can be loving kindness. If you see an addict suffering with their addiction, the kind thing to do would be to give them whatever it is that will stop them from being in the throes of their withdrawal. That is not loving kindness. Loving kindness can feel hard. Loving kindness asks us to step out, always seeking to grow further than we are. Loving kindness is what the folks in the shadow class are in the midst of, where you're engaging with those parts of yourselves that are challenging. You're engaging with the world in a way that is challenging. It is not about complacency at all. It is about continually seeking to show up more fully and more powerfully. It's about running roughshod over all the excuses that you have made in your life. Right now, all the excuses you are making for whatever it is that you're not stepping into, that is yours to do and yours to be. You know what I'm talking about. We all have them. Loving kindness just moves right through there. And you know that space, that place between, I call it the gap, between what we're trying to become, because we sort of have this sense of what we're becoming, and the reality of who we are. And in between those two is the gap. I guess that has a capital G on it. The gap. Mind the gap. Loving kindness is the bridge over that gap. Loving kindness is the way that we can hold ourselves and then ultimately everyone else in a place of compassion and peace and light and harmony. Loving kindness as a beingness is what we are all called to show up as. So how do we practice loving kindness on ourselves? What do you guys do? What do we do when we practice loving kindness on ourselves? How does that show up for us?
Meditate.
Meditation, yeah. I mean, that's the linchpin of Unity teachings, meditation and affirmative prayer, right? Like, that is loving kindness. And let me tell you, does that always feel good? Anyone who has a serious meditation practice knows that sitting down can sometimes be the hardest thing imaginable. But that is loving kindness. What else?
Rest.
Rest. And isn't that sometimes hard to do? Mm-hmm. I'm just going to stop. I'm actually going to take a day off. I'm actually not going to look at my emails for 5 hours. What is that going to do to you? It's hard. It's hard to disconnect. It's hard to step into that. And yet that is the space, the place that we're invited into to allow ourselves to know who we are. We can't know who we are if we are so absorbed in all those emails flooding our inbox. We lose sight of what's truly important. How else do we show up as loving kindness?
Silence.
Oh, look, and see how when the juices start flowing, right? It's great. So what did I hear?
Letting go.
Letting go, silence. Just be quiet. Maybe I should listen to that. Silence, allowing the silence to make itself known. Susan, did you say something?
Oh, no.
No? Somebody said something over
Take
here.
a walk.
Take a walk. I love that. Yes. I mean, each of us has a thing that will reconnect us with Source. Each of us has the thing that we do. Spend time with your kids, right? Get down on the ground and play with them at their level. Or take some time away from your kids. Get off the ground and actually sort of move in the adult world. Each of us is going to have a different practice, but the invitation is to really consciously anchor that for yourself, to understand that you are activating this awareness of loving kindness. So as we begin to cultivate this from the me, we are then able to show up to the we, which is your immediate community, your tribe, if you want to go that way, right? The people who are closer into you, that's the we. And in the Christian theology, they might call that brotherly love. That idea of brotherly love. This idea that we are here, yes, we are the thing itself, and we are showing up in relationship as the thing itself. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. Now let's be clear, it wasn't a new commandment. Love thy neighbor as thyself was in the 10 Commandments. But there is a shift in focus that Jesus is bringing into the understanding of what was happening within this sort of theology that's exploding. And he is shifting the focus from the letter of the law, right, which is the Mosaic covenant, do these things exactly, and you will have that infinite love. And Jesus is shifting the focus to the spirit of the law. The spirit of the law is to know God and show up as chesed. The spirit of the law is to give freely, to love one another. To love one another. And Paul goes on to give us a little bit more of a descriptive of what that exactly could look like. Rejoice with those who rejoice. with those who weep. I certainly was doing a lot of weeping this week. Live in harmony with one another. I love this one. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Can you hear the judgment in that automatically? And then the next one. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Every judgment you've ever had about anybody was you thinking that you were wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So this is a unity community. So we got evil up there, and I can feel everybody twitching, right? I can feel everybody like, evil, evil, what's evil? We believe in the good that's expressing as everybody's life. So let's define some terms, because what evil relates to is this idea that we're out of alignment. Evil is about when we're not listening to the deep understanding of who we are, and we are making choices that are not grounded from chesed. We're making choices that are not grounded in the understanding of the greater good. We're making choices from our pain and our fear and our loss and our lack and our small understanding of ourself. That is what evil is. The misalignment. Because here in Unity, we do not believe that there is a devil who is orchestrating an entire revolt against God. That's not what we understand the cosmology to be. We know there is only one. There's only one. So if there's only one, guess what? It has no opposites. There is no opposite to it. So what is understood as being evil is just this misunderstanding of the laws, of who we are and how that shows up. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So let's translate that into unity speak. And what we get is, do not be overcome by a sense of separation from God. Because that's all evil is. Forgetting that we are whole. Don't be overcome by your sense of separation from the divine. Instead, overcome that illusion by knowing truth. By knowing who and what and who we are. So loving kindness is how we get to practice oneness. And we talk about oneness, we're all one. How do you practice that? It's very vague. The way we practice it is through this understanding of loving kindness, of chesed, of brotherly love. This is how we get to practice oneness. And just as loving ourselves isn't very easy, whew! Loving others, man, just as challenging. We're all one. It's a mirror. So whatever's going on out there that's challenging you so much out there, there is no out there, folks. It doesn't exist. As you are willing to step in and love yourself and hold yourself and embrace yourself and be compassionate with all the ways you fail and all the ways that you don't live up to what you think you're supposed to live up to and all the horrible, bad, nasty, rotten, despicable things that you have done in your life. As you can hold those and bring them close, it allows you to be able to hold others and bring them close. And as we do that, we change the world. That's where it begins. During the shadow class, I was using the image of the lighthouse as being the work we're doing, that we are the lighthouse. And that the shadow work is looking at our foundation, going real deep and making that lighthouse very strong, very resilient, very present. You're not just the lighthouse for you. When you are a lighthouse, you are also a beacon for everyone else. And that's important. That's not something we dismiss. That's not something we ignore. So as we practice that with our nearest and dearest, the next step is to be able to open it up to the people we don't even know. The people that we don't even know, honestly, don't even know exist. Don't even know who they are or what they are. But the invitation is that we are that large. We are bigger. So the Buddha, radiate your loving kindness to every living being without discrimination. Oh, I was struggling with that this week. I could radiate my loving kindness to the families of those who were killed in that church in Texas. I could radiate my loving kindness so easily to them. And I was really struggling with the person who could walk in and do that. I was challenged. And I had to keep sitting with it and sitting with it and sitting with it without discrimination. Because that person is not outside of me, as much as I wish they were, as much as I want them to be. They are not outside of me. And all of a sudden it hit me in my meditation, just unimaginable pain that he must have been in. I mean, beyond anything I can actually even begin to understand. To be so lost in the separation, to be so lost in the illusion, that feels like it is the only choice that you have. And then I can feel the compassion for that. Condoning and having compassion are not the same thing. I can have compassion for that. And I know that somewhere in there, that me to we to us broke down for that person. He didn't know the me, and he didn't get it in the we. And the impact is on all of us. So this is what we're called to stand in. This is who we are here to be the lighthouse, to stand anchored in our awareness of loving kindness, of that compassion, and to do the work so that we can continue to practice. Because what the Buddha has given us is a practice. It's something that is never going to be done, but it's a practice to radiate your loving kindness to every living being without discrimination. There's a beautiful Metta Sutta that I want to read to all of you that I think is a really powerful way to continue to invite and cultivate this practice of loving kindness. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects her life of her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world. My hands are small, I know, but they are my own. And if I stand anchored in that consciousness, if I do my work right here, and I own it, and I step into it, this world is changed. It's changed right now, because right now everyone in here is changing. Can you feel that?
Yes.
When we say yes, the divine says yes, because guess what, folks? It's us saying yes to ourselves. This call for wholeness, this call for grace, this call for compassion, this call to show up as loving kindness is the truth of ourselves. So what if we actually just did it? What if we stopped being so afraid? What if we actually stepped out onto that precipice and truly loved our neighbor as ourselves? Even the neighbor that's really pissing us off. Really own that. Because this is the work. As we engage with it, it is transformed. So we're going to take this into our time of meditation, and I'm going to